It was. Well, some social media users are applauding Duduzane's composure at the state capture inquiry. The question that comes to mind, who could have coached him? He remained articulate even under pressure. PR specialist Tebogo Ditshego joining us now to talk about what goes into prepping someone to appear before such an inquiry like this, or parliament, or public presentations as well. Tebogo, good evening, and thanks for your time. So I suppose, yes, the words that were used to describe him were composed, that he was cool, he was calm and charming, as we saw there. I mean, you could almost believe him. You could almost believe what he said. So, did he get it right, do you think?
Yes, absolutely. And I think
in terms of what we saw.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in terms of what we saw, it was similar to what happened when we was at that magistrate's court.
Yes.
And there were protesters outside, and instead of protesting against him, they took selfies with him. And I think that is as similar to what has happened currently, that there was an expectation that there would be a lot of criticism about his testimony, but a lot of people were actually admiring him, from his composure to his demeanor to even his looks. Some people are having crushes on him on top of this.
Yeah.
But this speaks to a broader crisis communications challenge that we have in South Africa. A lot of people want to stay under the radar when they've got issues that are confronting him. And I think that in this instance that he's been a very good example of why you need to face it head on.
Okay, so what about this makes him a good example?
Well, firstly, I think there are two sayings that we would look at. The first one would be that when telling your story, hold the pen. And I think we'll suspend the other one for now. And that is important, that when you are telling your story, you need to be the narrator of your narrative. And I think that is exactly what he has done in this instance. If you do not tell your story, even if you are being falsely accused, they're going to only have one version of events, to judge the situation. And that's why you need to put yours forward.
So it's good that he came and he volunteered, right? This was a voluntary appearance from what I understand as well. So, but do you not think, just from listening to yesterday, most of yesterday and today, that, just the doubt he's cast, rubbishing everybody else is a liar but him, does that border, the line between charming and psychopathic might be very thin, a very fine line. And, at what point does that line get crossed? Because people know what has been said before. More than one person has corroborated that version of events. And then here you come and you say, no, that never happened. That person is lying. I'm not the liar. They are.
Yeah, that would be a very challenging one to evaluate because it's more psychological than anything. But I think that in terms of the crisis communication and the basics around crisis communications, he definitely got it right so far. Now,
enough to confuse people or create some doubt.
Well, it could create some doubt in the commission, but at the end of the day, his reputation is going to rely on a lot of what Justice Zondo says at the end of the conclusion of these results.
Okay, so, I mean, just looking at, when his father appeared before the state capture inquiry, and also, we were waiting and wondering if he would ever come. And then, Duduzane, did you see, if you had to compare the two appearances and the father and son, what would you say when it comes to crisis communication there? And just how they've handled it as a family? Well,
the first thing that they both got right is that they appeared at the Zondo Commission. Yeah. I think that's the first thing that you need. And the people who are rallying behind you, because there are political nuances to this, would be able to take your version of events and use it to defend you in public. I think that the difference between the two would be mainly that Duduzane was much more composed. I think he was much more confident in his approach, and he was very unapologetic. I think his father, on the other hand, used a lot of conspiracies, and I think that's a bit of a challenge from a communications perspective, because where is the evidence for what you are saying? And you're now opening up a new can of worms, of which if you can't prove it, then it then hurts the credibility of your argument.
And deflecting, I suppose. People see it as deflecting. The other word that people seem to have used for Duduzane Zuma was arrogant. Did that come across? Did he come across like that to you when you watched him?
Well, I think that could have come across in his BBC World News interview, where I wouldn't call it arrogance, but perhaps overconfidence. There is a thin line between being confident and being overconfident. And when you're overconfident, that's where you are delusional. You've deluded yourself into a reality that everybody can see does not exist. But in this instance, I think it was more confidence than anything anything, and perhaps it could have been after being consulted with the lawyers, saying that perhaps they don't have a case against you, so be confident and be firm, it'll be much more persuasive.
It was very interesting, I mean, his version of events and his reasoning as to how he ended up in this house as opposed to that one, and why meetings took place. The reasoning, you could almost say, okay, maybe, but then, you know, the other side of you goes, nah, I don't think so really. Okay, well, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you very much, Tebogo Ditshego, a PR specialist.